Okay, so they done bought us another video. And today, we will be doing a reaction to the brand new Style Theory video, the newest one. And this one will be Style Theory, you will never find them weapons. Let's see and find out what this will be about. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell us what you want us to act next. And before we get into it, hit that bell icon so you get notified of new and old content on Daily and Bulldog's upcoming live streams and live events. We do have a live event on my birthday, November 29th, but in 2025. So, if you would all like to come to that, it might be just 1 hour or something, or a few minutes. But it is scheduled for 9 a.m. So anyway, without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, tell us what you want us to act next. 3, 2, 1, let's see and find out what this will be about later.
Weapons is the most terrifying horror movie in years, with one of the scariest mysteries I've ever seen. But underneath all of that, the true terror is the evil lurking just beneath its surface. What is the real monster in Weapons? Here's a hint. Don't give it your name. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's run outside in the middle of the night for no good reason. So, earlier this year, some strange videos started popping up on my timeline that showed a bunch of children running through a neighborhood at night. No one knew why, but some of the videos and an ARG website explained that 17 kids just got up in the middle of the night, ran out of their houses, and disappeared. Already, that's an incredible premise for some sort of analog horror series, but in reality, this was actually viral marketing for a new mainstream horror movie called Weapons from director Zach Kreger. Fun fact, but he also used to make YouTube videos before making it big in Hollywood, so we just love to see these sort of content creators getting the budgets they deserve. Anyway, just from the teasers, I knew I wanted to check this one out. I actually went to see it with Matt and Steph, and all three of us were just blown away. Legitimately, this movie had the best first 5 minutes of any horror movie I've ever seen. Its hook is incredible, so much so that I actually pulled our analytics guy Josiah aside. He hates horror movies, and I told him that he had to go watch it because it was that solid. The rest of the story then follows the devastated community as they try to make sense out of what happened to those kids and the dark rituals hidden in the town that were actually responsible. It's surreal, it's terrifying, and best of all for us, it's packed to the brim with stuff to theorize about. What exactly happened to those kids? What was the significance of all of them disappearing at 2:17 a.m., if there was any? What was the symbolism around all the triangles that kept showing up? And what was with that giant surreal AK-47 in the sky? Even the director says he doesn't know what that one's about. But perhaps the biggest mystery, and the one that really hooked me, that made me want to talk about this, what's up with Aunt Gladys? I mean, just look at this character. You can tell something's wrong with her. And wouldn't you know it, but she actually turns out to be the villain. A mysterious woman who might be hundreds of years old, using dark magic to control people. Basically, she's kind of like a witch. Maybe she saps the life out of her victims for her own needs, and she can force people to do anything she wants, including hurting the people that they care about most. She's an incredible modern-day horror villain, so much so that they're already planning a prequel for her. But the more I thought about it, I'm not so sure that's the whole story. There's something deeper and darker going on here with Gladys, a mystery hidden within this mystery, and I want to get to the bottom of it. Gladys might be the villain of this movie, but is she the real evil? What is the actual monster haunting Weapons? Well, here's a hint for you. The last thing you want to do is give it your name. So buckle up and slurp on your soup, loyal theorists, as we get to the bottom of the power behind the witch in Weapons.
That's true. No good. Also perfect film theory episode to talk about on Halloween. A few days before Halloween, 3 days until Halloween, no care. Halloween is this Friday, people know.
Okay, so first off, let's do a quick recap so we're all on the same page about this movie. Though for real, just go watch it. It just hit HBO Max, and it's one of the best horror films in years, and this super simplified summary is not gonna do it justice. Weapons starts out in the small town of Maybrook, Pennsylvania, on a day like any other. A teacher named Justine arrives at school, only to find that every single member of her class has disappeared, except for a boy named Alex. The night before, at exactly 2:17 a.m., all of the other kids got up out of bed and just ran into the darkness. This devastates the small town, most of whom blame Justine for the disappearances, even though she had nothing to do with it. Separately, Justine and Archer, one of the parents of the missing kids, start their own investigations into what's happened, eventually leading them back to Alex's house. But what they find inside is disturbing. Alex's parents are in a strange, zombie-like trance, just sitting there on the couch, but even more horrifyingly, they're not alone in this house. A strange, elderly woman named Gladys is also living there, claiming to be Alex's aunt, but she has a dark agenda. Gladys is actually something like a witch who has taken possession of Alex's parents and is threatening to hurt them if Alex doesn't help her with her dark plan to kidnap all of the kids in his class so she can feed off their life force as well. As Archer and Justine get closer and closer to the truth, Gladys does her best to stop them and even comes close to getting Justine killed. But not before Alex is able to break the curse and help the enchanted kids kill Gladys instead. So, happily ever after, everyone gets to go home, right? Well, not so. A couple of main characters are killed along the way, and Alex's parents and the other kids are never
well, good then. Damn.
quite
Look. But yeah. Okay.
the same after Gladys's curse is broken. Their minds aren't all the way there anymore, and only some of them ever speak again. It's a bittersweet ending, perfect for this sort of horror, though it does leave a lot of questions unanswered. Now, you might think that's terrifying, but what's even spookier is how your internet connection might be haunted. But you can help protect yourself from the creepy crawlies thanks to our partner for today's theory, NordVPN. So we're at the point where I'd be shocked if you didn't know what a VPN is or what it does. It helps protect your internet connection and keep your browsing private. But something else awesome it can do? Well, you can get access to the libraries of streaming services all over the world. Yeah, like I have to watch a ton of stuff here for my job at Film Theory, and it's really annoying to have to pay for all these different streamers. Like, I already have Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max. Why do I need to get any more? And I was going to go watch Friday the 13th.
That's true. Money has been a problem.
For an upcoming theory, but it's on AMC Plus, Peacock, and Paramount Plus here in the States. Man, come on, that's so annoying. Well, with NordVPN, that's not actually a problem. They have servers all over the world, and since they route your data through those servers, they basically trick your internet connection into thinking it's coming from a different country. So I go and pick Brazil, and voila! I have access to all of Brazil's streaming libraries. Friday the 13th is on HBO Max over there, so I can go watch it without picking another streamer. Also, a bit of a surprise here, but NordVPN is actually teaming up with Marvel, of all people, for a brand new comic book.
Yeah, you can actually trick your Wi-Fi internet thinking that it can be coming from another country, especially when you can use NordVPN. So yeah, apparently that, yeah.
To get there. Yeah, this is real.
With the rising risk of flooding, are your walls ready? With EnduraFlood flood-proof drywall system, your walls become
brand new comic book together. Yeah, this is real. In it, one of the Avengers' old threats, the Super Adaptoid, returns and wreaks havoc on Iron Man, taking control of his armor. If only he had a NordVPN connection to protect himself. Yeah. So, if you want to be like the Avengers and defend yourself online against all of the terrifying threats this Halloween, go to nordvpn.com/filmtheory to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 months for free. There's like no downside since you'll also get Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Once again, that's nordvpn.com/FILMTHEORY. Thanks again to Nord for sponsoring this theory, but let's get back into weapons. For example, what exactly Gladys isn't clear in the movie, and that was actually a pretty intentional choice. Sure, she uses some weird magic and seems to need, like, the light life force of other beings to survive, but how and why isn't explained. Well, this was because no one knew her backstory except for two people, the director, Zach Cregger, and Gladys's actress, Amy Madigan. As the story goes, Cregger actually gave Madigan two options for Gladys's origin story and let her choose between them. The first was that Gladys was a woman who turned to dark magic in an attempt to survive a fatal illness, but the second option was far more intriguing, in my opinion. It was that Gladys was actually a creature pretending to be a human, behaving like a human, and then preying on them, which is why she looks and acts so strangely, like she's trapped in the uncanny valley. Now, just watching the movie, that first option of Gladys being a sickly old woman who turned to magic to survive does more or less line up with what we see in the movie. So, question answered? Gladys is basically a witch. But what if that wasn't the entire answer? What if both of these origin stories are actually true, but in a slightly different way? Gladys is a witch, yes, but that's also not all she is. There's a deeper story happening here, both on a meta level and in the actual lore of the movie, though those two things do feed into one another. Here, let me explain. Let's start out with the meta-level conversation, since that's what's been said in a lot of other stuff about this movie. And that's basically how the events in director Zach Cregger's life ended up creating this monster. If you don't know, before Cregger was making horror movies like Weapons, he was actually a member of a sketch comedy group called The Whitest Kids You Know. For people my age, these dudes were staples in comedy and were one of the first groups to find real success in online video comedy and to move on to bigger and better projects. Their old sketches were full of a lot of crass humor and vulgar language.
John, that is the President of the United States.
I don't care who it is, he's ruining Hamlet.
Oh! Now you f***ed up!
And that's all I can play before risking demonetization. Also, just to point out, the comedy to horror pipeline is just so real, isn't it? Now, normally, this would be some neat history, a bit of trivia that I'd bring up in the intro and leave it at that. But the reason I'm saying it here, well, Cregger's time in The Whitest Kids You Know directly led to the creation of Weapons. Back in 2021, Cregger's longtime friend, collaborator, and fellow Whitest Kid You Know, Trevor Moore, tragically passed away after an accidental fall. This deeply impacted Cregger, who sat down and just started writing as a way to work through the pain of losing his friend and channel it into something constructive. He straight up said that he wasn't sitting down to write a movie, but to soothe himself, and because of this, according to interviews with some of the actors like Josh Brolin, each character in the film was influenced by different parts of this struggle with Moore's passing. That's why so much of the movie is about loved ones trying to make sense out of a tragedy and going about it in wildly different ways. Some are angry, some are depressed, and some just want to soldier on and keep working. But as Cregger kept writing, the stream of consciousness became even more personal. According to the autopsy, Moore was under the influence of alcohol when he passed. Cregger himself is also open about the fact that he's a recovering alcoholic with a history of addiction in his family. So, as he kept writing Weapons, the story evolved from one just about grief to one about his family's relationship with alcohol. I think Cregger says it best himself.
Honestly, this is like, it started with me kind of obsessing over how I felt about Trevor, and then the end of it is me kind of obsessing over my dad.
And with that information, suddenly a lot of the film makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Like, several characters literally have drinking problems in the movie, but beyond that, the child character Alex is forced into a caretaker role for his parents, who are under Gladys's magic spell. This reflects how a lot of children are forced to step up and help take care of their families if one or both of their parents suffer from that addiction, or, as the movie shows, are basically transformed into lifeless zombies who can't even leave the couch. So, right there, that's the meta idea. Gladys is a parasite that represents grief and addiction. She's a leech that masks her sinister nature behind a quirky, disarming, funny, clown-like appearance. But she can turn loved ones against each other, demanding more and destroying families and communities because of it. And yet, things go even deeper here. There's more to this story than meets the eye. Another monster lurking just beneath the surface that is the real villain of this story, puppeting Gladys like she's under her own spell. We get a few hints of this throughout the movie, particularly the film's reuse of parasites. Remember, in one of Justine's dreams, we can see that she has a lesson about parasites on her whiteboard, and later when Gladys visits Marcus and his husband, they're watching a documentary about the cordyceps fungus. If you're out of the loop or haven't played or watched The Last of Us, this is a real fungus that chemically alters the brains of ants. It basically turns them into zombies that infect their own colonies, and this reveals the secret of this movie. See, this infected ant here, it represents Aunt Gladys. Ant and ant? Get it? But seriously, this sly bit of wordplay shows us that Gladys isn't the source of this evil. Yes, she is the villain doing terrible things to innocent people, but at the end of the day, she's just a vehicle to make it happen for the real parasite infecting the anthill that is this town. And that parasite is the tree. Yeah, that strange tree that seems to be the source of Gladys's magical powers in the movie. Well, there's a monster hiding inside of that tree that represents the second, more interesting backstory for Gladys. This one is
A heart-melting crush is waiting for you on Tinder. It's
the second, more interesting backstory for Gladys. This one is a doozy, loyal theorists, so just hold on and check this. I actually got my hands on an early draft of the movie's script, and though it doesn't name the exact species, based on the description of the plant, it's likely a blackthorn tree. This also lines up visually with what we see in the movie. Funnily enough, the blackthorn is more of a shrub than a tree, but I digress. That's just for plant nerds out there. But why does the blackthorn mean anything? Well, aside from its dark thorns, the blackthorn has a long history associated with witchcraft. According to legends, the branches of the blackthorn were commonly used for wands and staves, because they were thought to hold immense protective and deadly magic. It's believed that this comes from the blackthorns being painful and dangerous to pass through. Before modern medicine, a prick from a blackthorn could easily be infected and become fatal. So they were basically like natural barriers, with old-timey property owners even using them to fence in their land. So more or less they were natural, almost magical barriers because no one wanted to get pricked. So naturally, they were the perfect woods for witches to use to channel their dark magic. They could even then use the thorns on puppets to curse their enemies, almost exactly like we see in the movie itself. Also, interestingly, but despite the dangers, the blackthorn also had a dual role as a source of healing magic. Blackthorn berries, also known as sloe berries, have historically been used in tonics that help all sorts of illnesses. These potions take advantage of the berry's natural vitamins and antioxidants, helping with digestion, bolstering the immune system, and giving anti-inflammatory relief. Now, it was basically like medieval Tylenol, and people who followed folk medicine believed that it could cleanse the blood. All of this tracks with how Gladys uses the tree and her curses for her recovery. But there's an even deeper historical bit of evidence here too. See, during her first meeting with Marcus, Gladys waves off the sickness that's befallen Alex's parents like this.
Oh, no, it's not serious. Nothing terminal. It's just a touch of consumption.
Just a touch of consumption. That's a weird phrase, right? Well, this is actually an old name for the disease tuberculosis. For a long time, there was a common misconception that alcohol would help fight TB by relieving the symptoms in the short term. And back in the 18th and 19th century, particularly in the United Kingdom, blackthorn berries were used to create a distilled liquor loved and abused by the lower class. Though it does have to be said that alcohol would actually weaken the body, making tuberculosis even worse. This is such a weird, deep, specific pull that I feel like it has to be intentional. Like, it even fits in with all the themes about alcoholism. It's crazy. So, could it be that back in the 1800s, whomever Gladys was fell ill with consumption and sought the magic of the blackthorn to cure her? So, okay, that's some compelling evidence that the blackthorn is the source of Gladys's magic, but why do I say that it's the parasite? That it's the real monster in this movie? Well, for those answers, we need to look into the folklore and fables around not only this plant, but trees and the forest and plants in general. See, according to both Irish and Scottish folklore, blackthorn trees weren't just magical. They were the homes of fairies, fays, and spirits. If you don't know, all of those sorts of creatures are massively important for those cultures. For example, one of the potential origins for Halloween as a holiday is the pagan festival of Samhain, when it's believed that the barrier between the spiritual world and the material world was at its thinnest. Now, that's a very simplified version of that story, but basically, that's why all the spooky stuff happens on Halloween. Well, similarly, blackthorn trees were thought to be junction points where the barrier between the two worlds was weak all year round. They were more or less doorways between our world and what Celtic folklore calls the other world, filled with dangerous entities that you shouldn't cross. These fae and fairies weren't like Tinkerbell or the fairy godmother. They were often monstrous and terrifying. Legend has it that these spirits could trap people out in the forest, or torture them with magics, or even force vivid dreams into their sleep, especially if they were sleeping near a blackthorn bush. Exactly like we see with Gladys haunting the dreams of Archer in the film in one of the most terrifying jump scares ever. Now, to be clear, over time, a lot of this mythology has been changed and adapted and evolved in pop culture. Everything from Shrek to Dungeons and Dragons to Disney's Gargoyles has done a pass on this folklore, so it's a bit murky. But at least in modern pop culture, there are a few quirks and rules that you have to use with the Fae to protect yourself, many of which we see in Weapons. First off, remember the scene where Gladys first appears on Marcus's doorstep? Watch this exchange.
I am on the verge of collapse. Oh, could I please have some water?
Did you find it odd that she was trying very hard to weasel an invitation into this home? She was making up this absurd story all to get inside and get some water, almost as if she needed permission to enter, right? Now, needing an explicit invitation to enter a home is a trait most commonly attributed to vampires, but many supernatural beings, including both fairies and ghosts, can share this weakness. To be clear, we do see Gladys entering other homes at the very end of the movie, so this is more of a hint or a suggestion at that weakness. But still, if Gladys were a human witch, she could have just barged right in. But if she were hosting a spirit, or a fae, or something like that, she'd need explicit permission to come in. Another general rule is to not accept gifts from the fae, even if it's something as small as food or drink. The idea here was that it would put you in debt to the fae, who take that very...
My favorite thing is a good crow. They're a little creepy, I'm not gonna lie.
Tacos at Zaxby's? You know it. They took their famous chicken fingers and sauced them up in a soft tortilla shell. Taco Tuesday.
The fae, who take that very seriously. Like, enough so that other rules say that if you ever borrow something from a fae, return exactly what you took, nothing more, nothing less. And the idea of eating the food and drink of a fae binds you to their realm, and more specifically, to that fae. All of this is reflected in how Gladys's victims are force-fed soup to keep them physically alive, but completely bound to Gladys and her will. Also, just in general, fae and fairies have a lot of history with alcohol and being intoxicated in their stories, which itself is an interesting parallel to Weapons and the story it's telling about alcohol abuse. And finally, the biggest rule of fae and fairies, and the one that really cemented this connection for me here in Weapons, the thing that made me realize just how much of an influence that the fae have in this story, the biggest rule throughout everything I researched about the fae, through every version of them, was to never give them your name. In this folklore, names are a very important thing. Having someone's name gives you power over them. It lets you control them, replace them, anything you want. And tell me, when Gladys forces Alex to take items from the kids in his class for her ritual, what does he take? Their name tags. Their names. And just like the fae, that gives Gladys control over them. Like, it's symbolic, right? Now, to be clear, it looks like Gladys can control people as long as she has just something of theirs, something important to them, or even just their hair. Though Marcus's name is on the stand holding the ribbons that she uses to control him, but not the ribbons itself, it's weird. Regardless, sure, with Marcus and Paul and Archer, Gladys was able to control them. But when her spell is broken, Archer, who is the only one of the three alive at the time, completely regains himself. But the kids don't. Alex's parents don't. They're basically zombies, having so much of themselves leached away by the parasite. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that. Maybe the length of time under Gladys's control meant that there wasn't as much of them left to be freed. But you know what Gladys had over those kids and Alex's parents that she didn't have over the others? Their names. She knew their names, controlled their names, versus Archer, who she just quickly attacked out of the darkness because he was a random guy in her house. But even with all of those caveats, the fae and fairies and spirits are strange creatures. They have strange rules that aren't supposed to be completely understood. But given everything we do know about them, about their weird, arcane way of life, Weapons recreates a lot of it symbolically with its villain, and why it makes the most sense to me that Gladys herself is also under the control of the real monster in this film, a fae creature from the Blackthorn tree. And well, hey, sure, that's all well and good, but why? What does that matter? Why are these spirits haunting Gladys? Why would they want Alex's classmates or to keep Gladys alive when they could just kill her and move on? Well, while that might be explored in the prequel, we already know the answer. That documentary with the ant, the one that mentioned the cordyceps parasite, the one that helped us down this rabbit hole to begin with, well, it also says this.
That serve to spread more
What could that be?
spores.
The documentary says that the parasite needs to spread its spores. Their goal isn't just to turn one ant, but the whole colony. These Fae want more than just Gladys. They want everyone that she can enchant. All of her victims. Which I guess makes sense with the name of the movie, doesn't it? It's weapons, not weapon, after all. Whenever this prequel comes out, we're going to learn that Gladys and her community destroyed the Blackthorns that the Fae creatures called home. And in revenge, I bet they wreaked havoc on Gladys and her family, leaving Gladys alive, but cursed and forced to go from person to person, home to home, absorbing the life force of innocent people by using the very tree that she destroyed. And wouldn't that be ironic? But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory, the end of the world is here with The Moon Woke Up.
Okay. That will be the end of the reaction. If you like the reaction, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what you want us to react next. Also hit that bell icon so you get notified of new and old content on Dale and Bulldogs. Until next time, Dale and Bulldogs.
At Bay Fortis, we know Bay.
And we are out.